Hi, Rach. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Very excited to do this podcast.
Yeah, same. It's our first one, so I'm really
I
excited.
know,
I think it's a great topic we've started on. So yeah, it's really exciting. um,
definitely.
so yeah, I guess I'll just introduce our new podcast. So hi everyone and welcome to our very first coffee shop chat. This is a podcast where we'll look at the world of diversity and inclusion by chatting to some really inspirational people over a cuppa and asking them to share their experiences with us along the particular theme.
So obviously today is International Women's Day, which is why we're looking at kind of women in the workplace. Um, and I think it's really exciting that we've got our first guest, Angie Vaux, who is founder and CEO of Women in Tech Forum. But I guess before we bring Angie on, I kind of wanted to ask you, Rach, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Good question, actually. So I think for me, it's really quite a personal thing, more to do like the celebration of all like the amazing women I have in my life. So it's like my siblings who I'm really close to, obviously the great colleagues I've started to work with, and then all my friends and my mum. And it's just a celebration that, it's been, tough, especially over the last year, but how they've stayed so strong and they've been great throughout so many challenges in their life. And for me, it's just really celebrating and looking up to them as really inspirational people who've just helped me through ups and downs as well. So I think it's just how we all work together so closely just to lift each other up. And I'm just really grateful for these like people in my life. And then I guess more on a personal level, or not a personal level, like a work level, it's about some of those female mentors have actually really helped me gain more confidence in what I do. And, I think a lot of us agree we do lack, self-confidence and esteem, but hearing that we're not alone, I think really helps. And it's just kind of spreading the word of how we get through these difficulties and the bumps and how we can work together to really, make them successful and become successful in our career and outside our career. So yeah, it's quite broad, but National Women's Day mean to you?
No, I totally kind of agree with what you have just said. I think that definitely kind of resonates with me. Although I do have to say that I think in the past, I don't know, I've always found it quite difficult to kind of engage with International Women's Day. I don't know if it's because kind of, I guess my past interactions with it have been through work when I was working at a trend forecasting agency. And I always kind of felt like a lot of companies used to come out around International Women's Day, and it always felt a little bit like a kind of PR marketing kind of front, where they'd kind of be shouting about like, oh, these are the great women that work in our workforce, but actually, where are you celebrating them the rest of the year? And I don't know, to me, that kind of felt a bit disingenuous. But I think actually this year, obviously doing the podcast and doing the research for the podcast has made me engage like a little bit more with it. And I just think it's a really important day to just be kind of starting those conversations around, like, yes, celebrating women's achievements up until now, but I guess also looking forward to like, what can we do? How can we be part of this conversation as we move forward? And hopefully kind of can actually start moving further towards kind of gender equality and all of the kind of things that we're all kind of striving for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I couldn't agree more, actually. And I think that's why today's guest, Angie, is going to be so amazing, because I know me and you, Ree, have joined the Women in Tech Forum. And, we've listened to some of the great webinars with some inspirational people. And I just think that's such a step forward. It's not a one day, it's an ongoing thing where we can just consistently learn from each other. So, yeah, I'm super excited to speak to Angie today.
Me too. Let's get her on.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, Ree. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your coffee shop series today. I have my coffee ready.
Brilliant. Good.
I was literally just about to ask to kind of kickstart this off. As you know, of course, everything in the world is kind of turned upside down at the moment. But if we were in a coffee shop, I mean, what would your order be?
So my order would be a decaf oat milk cappuccino with chocolate on top.
That sounds great. I love that. Mine, I think would have to be a chai latte today. I'm feeling that kind of, spicy vibe. Rach, what are you having?
I think, I was going to go for something quite bland, just a tea. I just really fancy a tea today. So nothing too exotic, I'm afraid.
Very nice, very nice. Now we've got the orders in. Angie, I wanted to start off by asking you a little bit more about your career, kind of how you started out and how you've progressed to where you are now.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me today. So I've had a sort of 23-year career in the tech industry. And, I've always been very passionate about tech from an early age. When I was 8, I had, one of the first computers, which was an Atari 800 XL, for those of you who remember that. And I used to code and write sort of computer games. And so I've always had a passion for it. And so I started my sort of tech career at Morse, which is a systems integrator. And I was lucky to work with a variety of different tech companies in my role as sort of a partner marketing executive. So I worked with Oracle, HP OpenView, BMC, Sun Microsystems. And I always really enjoyed sort of solving business problems and communicating with customers. And so, so my dream was to go and work for SAP. I really admired the company, the values. And so, my next role was at SAP, where I stayed for almost 13 years and held positions all over the world in sort of London, New York, Singapore, Australia. And so, so I spent most of my career there in various sort of starting out in marketing and global marketing, and then moving to sort of run P&Ls for APAC and globally.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Angie. I think it's really actually very interesting to hear your interest in tech at such a young age. Did you find you were encouraged from this age to become a leader?
It's a really interesting question. I think I come from a working class family. I was, first in my family to go to university, and, the kind of first to sort of move away, the first one to go abroad. So I didn't really have a reference point, either, within my kind of sort of family or within the sort of community. And so I think it was really my own sort of drive to create a better life for myself. I've always had a passion for traveling. I've had a passion for tech. I have a passion for languages. And so, from when I started to do the German exchange, I think when I was probably 12 or 13, I started to go abroad for the summers. So each year I'd have my pen pal back in the day. And one summer I'd spend in Germany, and one summer, they would spend in the UK. The first plane I ever went on was by myself, age 15, to Germany. And so I think that's probably why now I'm such a big advocate of having role models. So I think sort of, I didn't really have those role models at the early stage, sort of early stage of my career. And obviously from then, I've been connected with lots of people in the industry who've helped and supported me along the way.
Kind of looking back on your career, what would you say are some of the challenges you've faced at different stages, and how have you overcome these?
I think one of the first challenges I experienced was I was lucky enough to be invited to sort of board meetings very early on in my career, even sort of pre-SAP. And it was just assumed that I was there to make the tea and to take the notes, both of which I did do. In fact, I did do for a long part of my career. So actually trying to speak up and have a voice was actually very difficult. And I have memories of it was a very old school tech company that came in for a meeting, and they just refused to make eye contact with me, and I was with my CEO. And so I like to draw. So I actually stood up and drew a diagram of a strategy on the whiteboard. And it was really interesting to see how impactful that was, because people naturally want to look at what you're doing. Like, oh, that's interesting. And so that was sort of a sort of strategy I use. And I also draw a lot when I speak as well, and when I coach. And normally when you're in meetings, you'll often find people sitting next to you looking over like, oh, that's interesting. What are you doing? Can you share what you're writing? So, so, it's very hard sometimes when you're in a room full of men to really speak up and have a voice. And so that was probably one of the earliest challenges I faced. And then particularly being in Asia as well, that was sort of further amplified. But this is where, excuse me, being assertive, being confident, and not being afraid to speak up is really important. And to continue talking, if somebody's talking over you, is actually not necessarily be the first one to stop. Just keep going and see what happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
It's a very good tip.
That's interesting. Yeah, interesting advice. I like that. I'll take that on board.
So following on, do you feel you've ever experienced prejudice in the workplace? And has that ever been related to the fact that you're a woman?
I think the workplaces, sometimes do have prejudice in. I think that's just a fact. A lot of people have unconscious bias, and, also growing up in the industry, a lot of this has just been the way it is. And I've never really had to question it until sort of obviously later on in my career. I always love a challenge. That there's definitely been instances where there's been a boys' club, where, I've been talked over, or, maybe been passed over for a promotion. But I think for me, I see a challenge as an opportunity and look for ways around that as well. So I think, there still is prejudice in the workplace and biases. And I think now, people are becoming more aware of it, because sometimes it's not intentional. There's no malice meant in it. It's just the way we've been conditioned at certain points in our careers. And so therefore, shining a light on that, having things like unconscious bias training, going through interviews with blind CVs, making sure that job specs are, there's software now that will remove words that are seen as sort of prejudice or not appealing to a broader audience. So there's lots of things now that companies can do to sort of start to remove that prejudice and educate people. And I think that we need, and organisations need to create that psychological safety whereby people can speak up without fear of retribution as well. So I think we're making some good progress in the tech industry and, more broadly, but we still have a lot more work to do.
That's interesting. I think even, we're all kind of guilty of, aren't we, to a certain extent, in terms of not really realizing our own unconscious bias. And I think that's why kind of we wanted to start this podcast, was just to begin those conversations and just kind of think about what it is, like what assumptions we kind of make on a daily basis. Have you noticed any kind of predominant shift or change now in how women are perceived in the workplace?
Oh, absolutely. There's a huge shift in how sort of women are perceived in the workplace, and, the importance of the contribution that women make, and also sort of diverse groups as well. So I think there's been a huge shift, but there is still a huge amount of work to do as well. And I think that the biggest shift I'm seeing certainly now is moving away from diversity just being a number and a quota, to actually driving true diversity, inclusion and belonging in organisations where everybody feels included, where everybody has a voice, and that's where the true beauty of different teams working together with different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different genders can all come together. And I think that's where true innovation happens and true diversity of thought.
Absolutely. No, I was just going to say, like, I think I've seen diversity inclusion is definitely creeping up, like a lot of like companies' agenda, and it's great to see. And I think it's forming a lot of like internal communities as well. And I've noticed that shift, and I haven't even been working for that long, but I think it's just great and really inspirational. So yeah,
I think that's quite a nice segue maybe into talking a little bit more about Women in Tech Forum, which obviously you founded in 2019. Is that right?
Yes, we had our first event in 2019.
Can you explain a little bit more about kind of what it is that you do at Women in Tech Forum?
So Women in Tech Forum was born out of a desire to help women accelerate their careers in tech and to really drive more representation in the industry. As a leader and sort of running businesses, I really struggled to build out a gender balanced leadership team. I wanted to sort of find out why. And obviously there are lots of external factors, but there are also internal factors that are holding women back in the workplace. So, women are less likely to claim their achievements or showcase their successes, preferring to attribute them to the team or to assume that the contributions are noted. And so I think that sort of holds women back as well when people are looking at people for promotions and career opportunities. And I think there are a lot of, women don't necessarily always have a voice at the table as well, and have to really struggle to get themselves heard. And so Women in Tech Forum was really born out of a desire to help women and equip them with those sort of softer skills that can really make a big difference in the workplace. And also I wanted to provide an opportunity to connect women with senior female role models in the industry, but also with each other and with their peers. I think, I don't want to look at stereotypes, but historically speaking, men have been much more better at networking. You have the golf days and the sort of cigars and football and things like that. And often women can feel excluded from those conversations. And so now it's about sort of driving a community where, it's safe for women and men. We have lots of men in our community as well, but to provide an opportunity for people to connect and learn from each other and also from senior role models.
And I guess because, obviously it's International Women's Day, we're talking about kind of women, inspirational women. Are there any women that you particularly kind of look up to or have kind of looked up to throughout your career?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly I'll pick some of the obvious ones like Michelle Obama, Oprah, Kamala Harris as well. I think will be a huge step forward for sort of women around the world. And so, I think they've really sort of, given women a platform, a voice, empowering them, particularly, if you look at sort of the likes of Oprah and coming from her humble sort of beginnings to sort of creating this huge brand that she has now. So definitely those are women that inspire me. But I also am inspired by, lots of people that I speak to on a daily basis. And I have to quote Marlon, who was sort of my inspiration for setting up Women in Tech Forum. And we've worked together for many, many years. And she's just been a huge inspiration throughout my career.
And yeah, just in terms of like achievements, I mean, what would you say is probably quite a big question, but what would you say your biggest achievement has been to date? This could be obviously outside work or in work, but yeah, if you've got any of your biggest achievements.
I think probably my biggest achievement really is founding Women in Tech Forum and, yesterday having 7 people join our company, and for me that was quite a turning point, both personally and professionally, because when I started Women in Tech Forum, it was really born out of a passion and a desire to give back to the community and to support the next generation, so they didn't have to go through some of the challenges that I and my peers went through. And to actually now see that with, a team of 10 and, working with, Adobe, Slack, G2, Sea Blue Marketing, all of that sort of big sponsors and partners, and sort of growing the community to sort of community of 5,000. I think for me, that was quite a moment yesterday. And I wanted to celebrate with champagne, but I'm on a detox. So lemon water instead.
That's still nice. Congratulations as well, by the way. That's really great.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
It's a big milestone. You have to celebrate with champagne when the lockdown's over and the sunshine instead.
Absolutely.
So yeah, something me and Rhea have actually spoken to quite a lot about, and I know it's something I speak to my friends about on a regular basis as well, is just sometimes, we do lack self-confidence and assertiveness. So I was just wondering if you had any tips or ideas on ways to utilize different skill sets to assert ourselves in the workplace.
Absolutely. And sort of statistically, there's sort of some broad stereotypes, there's always exceptions, but women are very much about preserving the relationship, and may not want to sort of speak up because they don't want to damage the relationship or cause conflict. And that's something I've been guilty of throughout my career as well. But actually asserting yourself and asserting your boundaries as well, I think is really important. Often what can happen is that, we want to people please and we want everybody to like us. And so we take on all of this work without really asserting our boundaries and what's best for us. So I think, the ability to speak up is and really assert ourselves is very important. And communication is key in the workplace, whether you want to move into leadership roles or whether you're an individual contributor. It's really important that you can communicate and assert your boundaries. Because if you don't, other people may unknowingly sort of take advantage of sort of good nature.
It's interesting because I know obviously you said that you recently made some new hires, so you've expanded your team, which is very exciting. And I was just wondering, in terms of kind of that idea of companies creating more diverse and inclusive workforces, what kind of processes or practices have you put in place within kind of Women in Tech Forum that kind of other companies, I guess, could, learn from or look to?
Absolutely. Well, Women in Tech Forum, we're fortunate in a sense that because we are, a rapidly growing company, the values that we have and the sort of standards and practices that we have, we are able to sort of shape our company from day one with our core values of inclusivity, diversity, authenticity. Everybody has a voice, everybody has a right to be heard. And so that is embedded into not just our company strategy, but our values and the people that we've hired. I'm really proud to say that I think we have a very diverse team across. We have men, we have women, we have people of colour, we have different races, nationalities, ethnicities. And I'm really proud to say that, I really do feel that we've got a diverse team. And, we're very early on working together as a team, but it's really great to see the different thoughts that we have in the ideation process. So I'm really excited to really champion diversity and actually to live and breathe the values and the messages that we are working with the broader tech industry on.
And I guess just in terms of kind of the tech industry, but perhaps kind of broader industries at large, in kind of I guess the private sector, where you don't have clearly kind of demarcated pay scales or kind of salary bands. Potentially, I know some companies do offer that, but I guess kind of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but that idea of kind of like attributing value to yourself and knowing your own worth. Do you have any kind of advice for women who are perhaps starting out in their career as to how they could approach that?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, which is know your worth. So do your research and understand what your market value is in the industry, and use that as a benchmark. The other thing I would say is that, also be aware of what you value in addition to salary as well, because the age in which we're in now, there's always going to be another company who will pay you more money than you're on currently, which is why particularly the sort of younger generations job hop quite a lot. So I think, first of all, be clear on what it is you're looking for in a role. Be clear on the salary benchmarks for the industry and where you sit on that. And don't be afraid to ask for it and stand your ground as well. You also have to be prepared to walk away if the answer is no. Otherwise, you've just weakened your negotiating power. But, this is something I did very badly early on in my career. I'd ask for a pay rise or wouldn't get one, or just get a nominal one. And I remember once that I was at a company and I was sitting on a plane traveling to the States with a colleague, and he asked me how much I earned, and I was quite horrified because, in British we don't talk about that. Yeah. And we chatted, and for the same role he earned triple what I did, and I was just flabbergasted, as was he. And I used that as a basis that, well, obviously unbeknown, but I had some personal circumstances as well that were happening, and I did push for it, and my salary did go up. It doubled, and then it tripled within a year. But I had to really fight for that, and I'd asked before, and statistically speaking, women actually do ask for pay rises as much as men, but women get pay rises less often than men. And so we fall down, we ask, and we're like, no, okay, or we might ask again. And so I would really be clear on what it is you're looking for and try not to deviate from that either. I've also turned down, who does that? I've also turned down pay increases when I moved to Asia, and my boss I was contracted out of the US, and I'm like, Angie, I really think you should be paid more. Oh, no, it's fine, because I didn't want to upset my boss in Asia, who was very strict, and so as women, and I talked about earlier, you want to preserve the relationship, and I didn't want to upset this individual in my mind. So I turned down more money that my actual boss, who was paying my salary, wanted to give to me.
Wow. I can so relate to that sentiment though, of the people pleasing and just trying to kind of keep all sides happy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It would actually be really interesting to know what International Women's Day actually means to you as well.
Absolutely. So, the theme for this International Women's Day is choose to challenge. So it's all about sort of calling out gender bias and inequality in the workplace, which is obviously key for us. And International Women's Day is also about sort of celebrating the successes of women in tech as well. So we'll also be commemorating International Women's Day, celebrating some of the great women, not just in tech, but around the world, who have inspired us. And also for us, it's about creating, an inclusive world where everybody has a voice and where everybody can thrive and learn together.
Absolutely.
That's very inspirational. I think, to finish up, obviously, you've had an amazing career. You've worked with some, as you said, really inspirational kind of women. The whole ethos of kind of Women in Tech Forum is trying to kind of, help mentor the next generation of women. So what kind of advice, just to sum up at the end, would you have for women who are starting out in their career now?
I think really reach for the stars and, think big and go for it. I think there's never been a better time to be a woman in tech. And it's to have that confidence and self-belief in yourself to go and create whatever it is that you want to get, know that you can achieve it.
Thank you so much, Angie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you for joining our podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Hi, Rach. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Not too bad. Very excited to do this podcast.
Yeah, same. It's our first one, so I'm really excited. I think it's a great topic we've started on. So yeah, it's really exciting.
Definitely.
So yeah, I guess I'll just introduce our new podcast. So hi everyone, and welcome to our very first coffee shop chat. This is a podcast where we'll look at the world of diversity and inclusion by chatting to some really inspirational people over a cuppa and asking them to share their experiences with us along the particular theme.
So obviously today is International Women's Day, which is why we're looking at kind of women in the workplace. And I think it's really exciting that we've got our first guest, Angie Vaux, who is founder and CEO of Women in Tech Forum. But I guess before we bring Angie on, I kind of wanted to ask you, Rach, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
Good question, actually. So I think for me, it's really quite a personal thing, more to do like the celebration of all like the amazing women I have in my life. So it's like my siblings who I'm really close to, obviously the great colleagues I've started to work with, and then all my friends and my mum. And it's just a celebration that, it's been, tough, especially over the last year, but how they've stayed so strong and they've been great throughout so many challenges in their life. And for me, it's just really celebrating and looking up to them as really inspirational people who've just helped me through ups and downs as well. So I think it's just how we all work together so closely just to lift each other up. And I'm just really